So good afternoon. This is going to be an exciting session, and I don't just say that because it's always exciting when I'm involved. My name is Kevin Ryan. I've been on the Ad Tech Advisory Board, I think now for the better part of a decade, and they come to me to help assemble content. So I'm one of the people who kind of donates his time to more or less help the industry move forward. And help us put us in a more or less, I know, not the more part, not the less part, definitely the more. So this afternoon we're going to be talking about partnerships and trying to find the right people to work with. But before I go into that, allow me to read the following housekeeping notes. Attention session leaders, please read the following reminders at the beginning of the presentation. All right? That's not number one. Let's see. Help reduce distractions for you and your fellow session attendees by silencing all mobile devices. That, if I had read this before, that would have been a nice segue for the whole bathroom mobile thing. That would have been super. Submit a session evaluation at the end of this presentation, and it's RYAN. Oh, come on. Get it, Kevin Ryan? No? Okay, all right, fine. So that's how we're going to play it today. That's fine. Downloadable for iTunes, Google Play, and BlackBerry Store, so you can get the AdTech app. That's pretty cool. And this presentation is being audio and video recorded. I need to revise my first series of statements. Say hi to the video guys in the back. Yeah, really smart. Yeah, thank you. And Nick is on AV back there. Super cool guy. Any questions to the session panelists need to be asked using the handheld microphone. We're actually going to take a Pasadena on that rule. You can just ask me, and I'll repeat the question for the recording so we don't have to monkey around with the microphone. And let's face it, on occasion, some of these heated topics, you end up handing the microphone to some lunatic who just wants to go off on a rant and not ask any questions. I hate it when that happens. It just derails the whole content. It's like that scene from Empire Strikes Back where he walks into the cave. It just starts to make no sense at all. So let's chat. First, there's me, super boring guy. I have a small boutique agency in Southern California called Motivity. I kind of split my time between New York and California. Joining me in structuring this discussion, I wanted to have at least 2 brands and at least 2 technology companies. So what we're hoping to get out of this is the perspective of all of these folks together in a discussion format that actually makes sense and that you can take some things back to the office with. So I sent out to my panelists prior to the event a question. And I'm going to start with Rhonda because Rhonda has some political objections to my question. But the first thing I want you guys to do is talk about your company, what you do. Give me the high-level view from 10,000 feet.
So do you want me to do that and then answer your question, or just introduce myself and then answer the question later?
So, I mean, let's just free flow. Okay. Let's just let it roll.
So I'm Rhonda Hansen. Obviously, I'm the problem child up on the panel. I work for a company called Concur. We do integrated travel and expense management. So I'm one of the in-house sitting up on the panel. And I run all of the digital marketing for Concur globally.
And what was the question?
So the question was, describe or choose your Star Wars character and why. And I have an issue with it.
Choose the character that you most relate to.
You might think to yourselves, what's the problem with that? I say it's a gender bias question because the entire cast is male, except for you have 2 options for female. Princess Leia, who might have had a romance with her brother, or Queen Amidala, who had a romance with the most evil man in the universe.
All right, so clearly Rhonda does not have a character. But Dave, I'm sure, does. So Dave, give us drop some science on us. Tell us where you're from, what you're doing.
Okay, yeah, my name is Dave Williams, the CEO and founder at Blink Media. We're a social media advertising company. It was founded back in 2008, one of the early ad API companies with Facebook. And back in August, we were acquired by Gannett, so now we're part of the Gannett organization. Prior to this, I'd started another company called 360i in the search space. And as part of that, we developed a technology called Search Ignite, which is now called Ignition One. And I mean, this one I was a little challenged by, but I was thinking Luke Skywalker. That might be the obvious choice, but
see, luminous beings we are. And there's 2 people in the room who actually got that. So you can't think of it in terms of gender, Rhonda. I'm just saying. Right. So Doug, please say hi.
My name is Doug Schumacher. I'm a co-founder of Zoom. Zoom is a social media content strategy tool, and it works by assessing a lot of the content that's being published on various social media networks for your brand as well as your industry competition, and showing you a number of different slices on that data to help you understand what content is most engaging. Now for the hard part, the Star Wars character. I'm going to go with, I was kind of seeing this through the eyes of my company. Since I work so much, I'm kind of one and the same with that anyway. So I was going to say I'm a Obi-Wan Kenobi. Kind of I've got a very powerful tool and kind of work in the background, hopefully making the agencies that we work with much more effective.
There you go. I'll accept that. Lizzie?
Okay, my name is Lizzie Fallows, and I'm the brand director at Timbuktu, which is a local bag company. So I don't know if anyone here is familiar with Timbuktu or has one with them, but we are one of the pioneers of the messenger bag, and we make one of the first companies to do made-to-order bags in the world, actually. So we have an online customizer, and we make more than 60,000 bags a year in San Francisco. So something we're very proud of. And I have done kind of everything for them, but most recently I'm in charge of brand. So it's like all the creative and marketing that goes into getting people to want to buy Timbuktu products. But I've run paid search for them for 5 years, so I think that's why I'm here. And no offense to women, but I would choose the princess because she has great buns.
So you see, it all comes full circle. And I have to tell you, I've been in this business for a while. If you're interested in reading my psychotic rants, you can read them in Ad Age, a bunch of them in iMedia, a bunch of them in various other publications. But it's rendered me totally unemployable because I always sort of tell it, I guess, like it is. And I've known Dave forever. He's extremely well respected in the industry, like pioneers of technology. Rhonda ran one of the biggest digital ad initiatives in the world with Getty Images prior to Concur and TripIt. Doug has a strong background in agencies as well. And Lizzie, I only recently met when you guys were going through your review and looking for agencies and partners there. Didn't select us, but I'll never hold that against you. You can't get mad at somebody for not picking your agency. It's like getting mad at a woman for not wanting to date you. 80% of the time, it's really got nothing to do with you. It's true, though, right? It's probably has nothing to do with you. You can't be mad at somebody for that. So if you're interested in helping me falsely inflate my cloud score, it's at Kevin M. Ryan. And if you want to tweet the rest of us, we're all there. That is the absolute last time I will put the Twitter addresses up there. So what are we trying to accomplish here? I think through the course of this discussion, I want to hear from the brands about some of their selection criteria. How many brands do we have in the audience here? How many people are not willing to admit that they're with a brand because all the salespeople in the room will tackle you on the way out the door, right? It's okay, I won't tell anyone. We could just, me and you can keep that a secret. It's good. She's right over there. Agencies? Yeah. What do you, the rest of you people do? Why are you here? So technology companies, solutions? Yeah? Yeah? Okay. All right. No, seriously, what the rest of the, anyway. It's a complicated universe. It's really, really difficult. I laugh when I hear people say, oh, you're specialized in search. It's such a narrow category to be in. Oh, you're specialized in social. God, it's so narrow to be in that category. The reality is you can hire a dozen vendors to just execute an SEO initiative. There are people who just write copy for SEO. There are people who just do location-based stuff. So trying to figure out how to navigate that myriad of possible vendors, of possible agency partners, of possible technology tools can be very, very difficult. And this is just the buddy media. I love this thing. It's super spectacular. It kind of gives you the idea of how many people are in the space and how convoluted the space is and how crowded the space is. And I love at the bottom, I pulled this off a news site, but it says proprietary and confidential. So if we could just keep that between us and not tell anyone that I pulled this off a news site, good Lord. But I like to break it down to really simple things because we don't actually have a lot of definitions. And I have a lot of interactions with people. They don't really know what an agency is. They don't know how to define an agency. They don't know the difference between an agency and a technology company. They don't know the difference between an agency, and I apologize for my voice. The second the Santa Ana winds start blowing, I get the dust. Yeah, it's really handy, because like 5 minutes before I have to go speak in front of a couple hundred people, I can't talk anymore. Hence, I'm chugging the life water. And I think it's largely our own problem in the industry, because we haven't clearly defined where the boundaries are. So I'm just going to break it down. A couple of really simple ideas. What are we talking about today? We're talking about resources, politics, and accomplishments. How do you navigate internally? How do you figure out what you need? And how does that get you to your next job and or bigger bonus and or full-time job playing Xbox? Right, Chris? That's me and you are going to be. Chris Boggs is are you global chair of SEMPO now? Is that, yeah? And you have a session right after this? Very smart guy in the audience here. I'm calling you out. What's an agency? Well, an agency is a professional services company. An agency acts in their clients' best interests. Back in the day, we did not only plan media for our clients and then sell them media. It's kind of a conflict of interest, but hey, who's judging? A professional services company is not what I would refer to as a scalable asset. You can't increase revenue by 4,000% without increasing staffing to accommodate it. Facebook increases revenue by 100-fold, and they have to add more servers. Or in an agency environment, you have to add people every time you add revenue. Tech solutions are great scalable assets. The things you're always reading about. Gets all kinds of funding. It's a tool. It'll provide you with intelligence. But at the end of the day, you typically have to hire an agency or some sort of professional services entity to help you use that information. Right? It doesn't make sense for a scalable asset for a technology company to staff against what we refer to as a services set because the revenue multiples don't exist for it. And then client, very simple. The clients are the people paying their bills. And in my instance, the best clients are the ones that pay their bills on time. I was a big fan of that. I got super. So, and by the way, I don't use, no disrespect to Rhonda's career choices with Getty Images. All these images that you'll see, with the obvious exceptions, are pictures I've taken. So I don't do stock photos. I actually travel all over the world and take stupid pictures of things. And this is hysterical. I just landed at JFK Airport, and I was being taken into the city. And we pulled up next to this truck. And on the side of the truck, it said, unleaded fuel only, and then diesel spelled wrong twice. So I thought it was nice that, consistent with the theme of possibly giving our vendors or our technology folks mixed messages from time to time. So selecting vendors, selecting partners. That process begins with trying to determine what your need set is. And I had spoken to Rhonda, and I've spoken about this at length. And I was really impressed with you, Lizzie, when you started talking about kind of what your needs were at Timbuktu when you were doing your agency review. Can you tell us a little bit, and I guess I'll start with Rhonda. You went after peer input. What does that mean?
Well, I've gone through vendor and agency selection a number of times, and it's amazing to me how many people want input to the vendors you work with. And so I guess peer input meant to me just reaching out to my internal community and finding out from them what their pain points are and what their perception on digital marketing might be. And they have agencies that they've worked with in the past that they might really appreciate their relationship with. So it's kind of a way of just reaching out and getting input from them that helps to buy into the process.
Okay. Do you concur? Have you? I know,
no
right?
Pun intended.
I had to.
No pun intended.
I had to. So when you were looking for a new agency, you kind of socialized it internally too. You did basically the same thing.
Yeah, it was funny because I kind of had to convince myself because I'd been running ads for us for so long. And so then I had to convince myself, which was the hardest thing because as we spoke about, I was very, very skeptical of agencies, of the alignment of the cost and basically the percent, like how most agencies work is you pay them based on a percentage of spend. And to me, that just seemed like the incentives were all wrong. But then, yeah, I did have to convince the team, and it was really difficult to do so because, I'm free. So why would we hire someone else to do it? So I had to really convince myself, first of all, that an agency would be worth it and that they would have our best interests in mind, and then find a way to convince the team that, like, this incremental monthly spend that we didn't have was necessary. So that's where kind of like peer reviews outside the team became really important because suddenly they wanted to get kind of validation from people besides me that this was a good idea. So kind of teeing that up for them was helpful.
So, and you mentioned the compensation, the incentive-based basically at that point it's incentive-based. Like the more I can get you to spend, the bigger my check is going to be.
Yeah.
You're not a fan of that.
I mean, I tried to find an agency where that was not the case at all, and it basically didn't exist. But what we learned and what we were able to kind of negotiate was like another layer of that where we were incentivized. So a return on investment kind of goal where, okay, yes, if you spend more this month, we'll pay you more, but you have to hit these targets. So that was difficult because having run ads, I understand how difficult that is to actually hit the targets, and sometimes you can't control it. So it's kind of a double standard because if you don't understand advertising and you've never done it yourself, it seems easy. Like, here's a goal, hit it. What is your problem if you don't hit it?
Yeah, so. and that's one of the things that kind of as somebody that owns an agency, it kind of drives you crazy because you're defining and socializing a relationship. You're thinking about what your requirements are, and as a baseline, you're trying to set an expectation level, and all of the agencies are competing to hit that baseline and that goal. Do you think there's an issue with setting expectation levels that are just out of control and unreachable?
Yeah, I would say that we've actually done that. Like, I think we had very aggressive growth targets, and I think, we're really happy with the agency that we're working with, but I personally feel badly for them because I feel like the goals are really difficult to hit. And so I think that's a real challenge where, as an agency, I think you have to be really disciplined in not signing up for goals when you don't think they're realistic. So it's a push and pull because you both want to push each other. The brand wants the agency to work as hard as possible, and the agency wants to do a good job and make as much money as they can. So I think treating each other like a real team is really important because inevitably you're not going to hit a goal and you don't want to become enemies because then nobody's incentivized to work together. So it's been a very interesting, challenging process to kind of transition to an agency.
So that's a really interesting conversation because I've worked with an agency in the past where it was based on a percentage of spend, and I ended up firing them because the recommendations constantly was to increase spend. So then I went to kind of a similar model that you went to, and it was a long contract negotiation. It probably took me 2 months to come up with all the metrics, with the revenue goals, right ROI, and then halfway through the year we went through a pretty big budget cut, so it was completely unachievable for them. And we had done an incentive program, so if they had hit the revenue and ROI targets, or ROAS targets really, then they would get a bonus. And they were banking on that in order to make it a profitable relationship. And so at the end of the year, it was totally not worth it for them to renegotiate with us. Right. So you have to be really careful about doing those kind of contracts.
What happens when you're 6 months? And one of the things that struck me when you were going through your review, Lizzie, is that you were very forthcoming with, look, we're looking for a long-term relationship here, which is very clear. It makes it very clear to me that you're looking for the benefits of a long-term relationship. The benefits of a long-term relationship is that you get an agency that really learns your business, that really understands it. But is that the thought process that you were kind of going through?
Yeah, and we have this, because we're a small company, we have the like get hit by the bus syndrome where like, heaven forbid I disappear, nobody would know how to run ads. So it has to be a long-term
Job
solution.
security.
Yeah, I mean, it was kind of dumb of me to move to an agency then. But yeah, definitely a long-term. I just, again, because I was skeptical of agencies to begin with, and that's just like personal bias, but I learned a lot about it, so it was a good experience, but definitely want a long-term partner, because you want someone who cares about the brand, you know, and it's going to stick with it. And it takes up a ton of energy to find an agency, onboard them, negotiate the contract, then they have to get up to speed. So it just feels like a big waste if you're going to switch agencies every year.
Are you balancing the, and this is where, you know, I want to start hearing from Dave and Doug. Where do you, so the agency's responsibility begins and ends with what? So you're managing, is the agency managing all the tech companies, all the tool selections, or is that a process that you're involved with? And I'll ask you that question first, and then I want to hear from Dave and Doug as to the people that they talk to. The silos are ridiculous. The social media person only wants to talk to other social media people. The search person only wants to talk to other search people. And internally on the client side, it's very difficult to get everybody together. But I'm kind of curious from your perspective.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're small enough that we're pretty flat. So like we pick the technology platforms that we're going to work with, but we would talk about it with, you know, they came with a certain suite of software that they like to use to manage ads. So we use that, but they're certainly not telling us to go use this very specific kind of like content strategy tool or something.
Okay.
So, yeah.
So Doug, when you're talking to folks about Zoom, and are you speaking primarily to the agencies, or are you speaking primarily to the brands?
It's pretty much of a mix. I mean, I would say it's probably 70% agency, but we definitely talk to a lot of both and a lot of each. And size-wise, it varies a lot too. And it's interesting what you're talking about in terms of identifying who your primary target is there, who's going to be the main user. That changes a lot too, depending on the size of the company, the size of the agency. Smaller agencies and clients, you're oftentimes talking to one person who's a very specific decision maker. You don't have a lot of people to get brought into that decision process. But with a lot of larger agencies, you can have people from 2-3 different disciplines within the agency, all being a key part of that decision-making process. Not to mention, sometimes that's even the clients are even brought in to assist in that. So it really we see it varying a lot based on those parameters.
Dave?
Yeah. So what we've seen, we've worked a lot historically with the agencies directly, and that could be purely from a licensing perspective and working with the various teams within the trading desks at the agencies. So the trend these days is for the agencies to actually work through a trading desk where they're aggregating all of their media buy across display, mobile, video. And then within the trading desk, what we've seen historically is that they want to use multiple technologies. They don't want to be married to one technology to the extent there's a lot of innovation going on. So, and then there may be some technologies they want to use depending on the client. So there could be certain technologies that are better at doing certain types of things for certain types of brands, depending on the size of the brand or the scope of the project. Then we also see more even on the managed services side of things working with agencies where if it's a smaller, more boutique agency, typically they will just make one technology, have one technology partner. They just don't have the resources to be working with multiple partners. So, in those scenarios, we're trying to really influence it again there with the agencies. We'll also reach out and work directly with the brand. So to the extent we have solutions that we feel are highly differentiated for certain types of brands, we would like for those brands to be influencing the agencies in terms of their technology selection. So we're kind of working at it from multiple different angles, I would say.
It's boatloads of fun. And it seems like it's all over the board in terms of how people are selecting their technical solutions. Rhonda, do you count on your agencies to sort of vet the new technologies?
Yeah. So the last major process I went through, I was going through an agency. I was moving from full service, this is for paid search. I was moving from full service to, I wanted to have an independent relationship with my agency versus my technology, because I felt like I was just too far in bed with one solution. And so I forced the agencies to come to me with what paid search bid management tool they would recommend and why. Just to see if it would influence our internal process. So that was really important. And it was interesting because almost everybody, we had 4 agencies pitch us, and 1 agency came back with the alternative solution. So I thought that was kind of interesting to see what they're thinking and why they would choose technology. So I think it's really important that you're choosing agencies that challenge you in your thought process. I think that's one big reason why you want to choose an agency, is because they have more breadth and depth in the industry than what I have as an in-house, and so they bring knowledge that I don't necessarily have.
It's a good point. It's a good core selling proposition for why you hire an agency. They know the business, or if you're partnered with the right technology companies. We've partnered with Doug's company in the past. We've partnered with Dave's company as well. It seems to me that it should be a lot more transparent than it is, because the agency traditionally should be bringing a lot of intellectual capital to the argument, to Chewbacca's home planet.
And you want to be told you're wrong sometimes. Like, you're walking down the wrong path, and you want someone to put you in check, and there's no one else that's going to be able to do that for you than an agency.
Right before you fire them.
Yeah. Right before you fire them.
I'm
or
wrong.
Give them more money, or give them more money, because that happens too.
Yeah.
Yeah, that objectivity is big. I mean, back from my copywriting days, that was one of the reasons why people hired agencies, was because the agencies would come up with the crazy ideas that internally a lot of companies simply couldn't support. And I see the same thing in tools. It's objectivity, and that's really valuable.
All right, good stuff. I'll take it. So we touched on this a little bit, and this kind of leads into the discussion. By the way, this I was doing some shopping, and I grabbed this, and then I tweeted the picture without realizing where my thumb was in the picture. But it's a hell of a wipe. No question. Armor All makes an amazing product, and I use them frequently. Not for that specific purpose, but so I asked these guys what, again, miscommunication can be misinterpreted, running with the theme. I asked these guys what a good agency partnership looked like. What are the qualities? And a lot of this applies to selecting technical resources as well. But Rhonda just touched on this. It's industry knowledge. Digital changes very, very quickly. And it's almost a part of the process now for us to understand that some of the companies that, from a technical perspective, that we partner with are going to fail. We expect them to fail. If we didn't, we wouldn't have any innovation. The standard for selecting technologies and then explaining to the client in a very realistic way that, look, some of the technical solutions that we have aren't perfect, and we're going to try some new things. Is that, from the client perspective, a sound approach? Are you guys prepared to see some technical solutions fail? And what do you do about that? Because it's an inevitability. Some of these technical solutions will fail. The funding runs out. I don't care how well some of these companies are funded. What does that look like? Are you sitting in front of your CMO going, I'm really sorry?
Yeah, that's a really good question. When I choose, so we're talking technology partners, right? I just want to make sure. So when I choose a technology partner, I'm full in. Like, I am a reference. I go out and I talk on their behalfs all the time. I just feel like it's really important that their success is my success. So in terms of tools that fail, it's like, yeah, wow. That's really hard. I guess you have to kind of stay in tap with what's going on out in the industry, so that you jump that ship before it sinks.
And when possible, I think it's important to dip your toe in the water a little bit before you sign some huge contract. So all the technology that we use, like we're a 25-year-old company, but we're run like a startup, so we don't have a big budget, so we've never had the luxury of hiring or bringing on expensive technology. So we always have to do the kind of scrappy beginning, which I think is great because you get to use it, see if it works, and then you can kind of double down if you like it.
That's probably why you are a 25-year-old company, because you're not out like wasting money on crazy things that you don't need, and it's good. It's good strategy.
The one thing I would say is that you kind of see this through the RFP process, or especially in the early, more innovative stage of development in some of these technologies, or this social chart that was up there before. The one thing that clients typically don't ask or they don't dig enough into is what is the funding of the company, or what is the vision around what you guys are trying to do here, because for a lot of these businesses, who they are today and who they are tomorrow, they might not even fail. They might just be pivoting in their business model. They might change what they are as a company, and there's so much of that going on, or they get acquired by another business and it shifts the direction they're going in. And so, these are things that we'll see, even out there and competing in this space, is that, companies that really don't do enough diligence, I think, to really understand some of these really key and important things in the earlier stages of some of these new areas.
Yeah, and of the two things you mentioned, Dave, it's interesting, too, because we get a lot more people asking us about our product development roadmap than funding. It seems like and I think that's, reasonable. They're more interested in, is this a viable business model as far as how you see things evolving, what our needs are, and so it's been interesting to see that.
So in terms of the agency relationship or the agency partnership, two things really kind of jumped out at me, and I think both of you had talked about this with me at one point or another. Flexible processes, right? Because that's not something that you would traditionally expect to a large extent from your technology solution. And one of the reasons that you have like hundreds of these technology solutions is that they're very good at that one thing that they do, or they're very good at that one category of things that they do. To what extent are you leaning on the agencies to go basically off the statement of work, to be flexible, to accommodate your process? And what does that look like?
We sound like nightmares. I think we ask a lot because we're small, and so we kind of expect everyone to be scrappy and nimble like we are, and we forget sometimes that larger companies, it's harder to do that because it's more like turning the container ship. So that for us, I think, is just really important in terms of selecting a partner, is that type of thinker of, like you talked about depth and kind of breadth of an agency. That's incredibly valuable to us because we had me, who knows like some about search, but now we have this whole team of folks who are experts. So not only is their expertise important, but their willingness to kind of think beyond their field is really important because they can kind of comment on pieces of our business that aren't necessarily what we're paying them for, and then they become more of a partner, and it's a more meaningful relationship. So that for us is kind of a prerequisite in partnering with anyone is having them be a true partner. But
how important is it to have knowledge of your industry vertical as opposed to, or in addition to, I guess, knowledge of the digital universe?
I think different people would answer that in different ways. So our kind of sales director thought that was critical, that they understood retail. And if you're in retail and you understand retail, you know retail people. They get it. But I think for search specifically, I think you could do very well without really understanding the bag space. But it's a nice to have. And I think it's more important to understand the brand so that you can write adequate copy and kind of spot opportunities that match the brand.
There's a lot of that, like it sounds like I'm going through puberty. Anyway, there was a lot of that, like, I don't understand why people celebrate Mad Men, because it was just like an awful time to be in the ad industry, but people think it was so cool. Yeah, it was not cool.
It's the cool furniture.
It's cool furniture, and you could smoke cigarettes in the office and get drunk.
And brown liquor.
And apparently objectify women, and that's okay. So that's great. Let's celebrate that. It's total genius. I love that show. Where was I going with that? Oh, right, channel knowledge. Back then, it was, I know tires really well, so I'm going to come in and I'm going to teach you everything that I can communicate the value proposition of selling tires. I can do everything. I know everything. All of my agency does is handle tires. But now we have agencies that just do search. We have agencies that just do display and performance media. Are you guys thinking you need to be hiring those types of shops? Are you going to a specific agency for their industry knowledge or their section of digital knowledge?
So this is actually something I'm currently going through right now because we're really trying to become more of an integrated marketing campaign company where we're thinking it from all angles and then launching it as a complete package. And I just haven't been able to find an agency that can do it all. So so we're just trying to wrestle of how do we select the right agency for the right thing. So PR versus social versus display versus paid, and how do we integrate all of it, and how much can we ask one agency to do, and then if we select multiple agencies, how do we get them to communicate with each other? So and communicate with us at the same time, which there's always someone who gets left out of the loop somehow. So I think it's a real challenge.
Collaboration is another thing that comes up pretty consistently, and there's a fine line between putting your agencies in a room and having them collaborate and putting your agencies in the room and they're constantly pitching each other's business. And that's, I mean, somebody laughed. I mean, it happens all the time, right? So this is something that I'm very passionate about and have been for my entire career. You guys are the clients. It's your job to tell the agencies what they're supposed to be doing. And they all need to be confident. If you're going to put them in a room, they all need to be confident about what their abilities are and what their responsibilities are. That way they're focused on your objectives as opposed to kind of knocking each other out of the box. Healthy competition is good. Unhealthy competition is chaos.
Yeah, and it's a challenge because you have multiple people internally handling these channels too. So it's like you have to be able to communicate well internally so that you can get your agencies to communicate well too. So I mean, there's a lot going on all at the same time.
We could probably do an entire day on just that.
Oh yeah, my email's blowing up right now.
So we started to touch on this, but the happy qualities for technology, this is just a screen grab from one of my favorite tools, Evidon, Ghostery. It's absolutely the neatest thing. You go to any website, and it'll tell you exactly the number of cookies, tracking devices. I shop almost exclusively on the Lenovo website, so this is just a quick screen grab of, and I've been to publishing sites. There's like 30 or 40 of them, and you just look at something like this, and you're like, all right, well, add this, ad.com, Blue Kai, Brightroll, Channel Advisor, Connexity, DoubleClick Floodlight, Insight, and Experian Marketing Services. So I got like 3 different kinds of analytics here. We've got Omniture and Google Analytics, OpenX, Right Media, Rocket Fuel, Spot Exchange, ValueClick. Can we add kitchen sink? I mean, somebody's got to negotiate all these contracts. Somebody's got to implement all these tracking devices. But I think it's just interesting to see this is just a typical relationship. This is a typical website. And I actually did find one that didn't have any, but it was an Italian wine producer, genius guy in Tuscany. He's just like, he doesn't give a shred of a shit if anybody buys any of his wine ever. He has no tracking devices on his website, and he just like, if you want to buy my wine, you'll come and get it. I love that. I admire that. So things that are important for us when we're looking at technology. I'm going to put you two guys on the hot seat now. Proof of concept. And Doug, I want you to talk about this because you guys have come out of proof of concept, and it was a very tough time, I think, that you guys came through. But what does that look like?
Yeah, I mean, basically everybody wants validation, and I think it reflects back to what we were talking about earlier, which is, nobody wants to invest in it. It's like what Bill Gates said. You don't buy software, you invest in it. And I think that's how a lot of agencies look at things. Is it takes time to go through these decision processes, and so on. And so it's not like a switch that you turn on overnight. It's something that you gradually build up, and you build it up through working with different clients, expanding on your product features, and just your visibility in general. And so you never know when you're quite out of it, but it seems like one day you kind of wake up and you're like, okay, well, we've got a legitimate business that's working and solving some problems. So that's I guess that's how I would summarize it. Is it's a very vague, amorphous thing when you're going through it, but somehow you get a sense when reach that point.
And Dave, you mentioned this before. I mean, some people ask whether or not the company's well funded, and other people don't seem to care. Is that an educational thing? Is that people don't know to ask that, or is it just something that they don't know what they don't know?
Yeah, I mean, I just when you're in the earlier stages, I guess people are just grasping for solutions or things that they hear about in the press, or they just assume that some of these companies are well funded, but even if the company is well-funded, doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be successful. So, it's kind of challenging to kind of weed through all these different companies that are out there. Our company, we work in the kind of the ads API space for social, and it's a very crowded space. So you have a lot of companies that are very well-funded, some companies that are owned by publicly held companies like ours. So we're looking at a little different perspective, but it is it can be very challenging from the situation of the well-funded companies. We call it like the West Coast offense, so maybe some of you all can appreciate it out here, but these well-funded companies that have a lot of VC money behind them, just going for a lot of market share, not necessarily looking for profits in the early stages, and adding a lot of features, just kind of a feature creep war, to kind of put a lot of the other companies sort of out of business, whether you need all this stuff or not. It's a whole other question. So, yeah, I mean, and then kind of getting back to the proof of concept, I mean, I think for us, we started off just delivering the offering ourselves internally as a service, and so really kind of built the product and the technology around our needs, and really kind of taking that as a first step versus building technology for third parties and not necessarily utilizing it ourselves. I always kind of think that's a good approach to take, just to make sure that what you're building is actually something that's going to be sort of useful, versus just technology for technology's sake.
Well, and looking at this list, there's an awful lot of redundancy there. Do I need Google Analytics and Omniture? And from your perspective as brands, how do you choose? I mean, there's an awful lot going on there. And how many analytics suites do you need? 1, 2, 6, 11? Oh, no, you have to answer that one, yeah. Redundancy is the
I like
issue.
redundancy, yeah, I do. I mean, Google Analytics is free, so there's no harm there by implementing Google Analytics. The challenge is...
Except for the army of consultants that you have to hire to actually install it correctly.
Well, yeah. Well, the same for SiteCat. I mean, SiteCat has the same problem, only it's way more complex. But it's...
Rhonda's not on the Omniture payroll, apparently.
No, we use SiteCat. We use SiteCat, we use GA. But the challenge is when then you're bringing in your paid search tool, you have then your social tool, then you have, maybe you're using a totally different system for organic search, and how do you integrate all of it, and and then Eloqua, and then, Tableau. I mean, we're using all those systems right now. So who has the sanctioned data set? I think that's the question.
Well,
who owns it? Who owns the sanctioned data set?
So, Lizzie, which set of numbers do you pay attention to, and which ones do you ignore? Just the good ones, and then, that's why you have multiple analytics suites, so you just pay attention to the good numbers. Because we know they're never going to match, right?
Yeah, we only pay attention to the numbers that we like. So we have this internal battle where we have, we are multi-channel, so we have a retail store, we sell at wholesale, so like REI and those kind of guys, and we have a direct website. So depending on how you're reporting revenue, the numbers can look quite different. So within GA, it's like, hey, things are looking good, So we have more of an internal struggle. We tend to pick, free tools just because we're small and test them out. But then we have this kind of internal struggle of whose data is better in the company. So maybe it's just like a duplicity thing that every company struggles with. I don't know. And everyone thinks they're right.
Yeah, and maybe the redundancy is a good thing because, as we know, technologies come and go. As Dave said, they shift strategy. 1 week we're doing social analytics. Well, maybe we're, a month later we're doing social. We're in the ads API environment. So maybe it's not a terrible idea to, as you're going through the selection process, have a couple of redundancies. I mean, for us, I don't think I'm ever going to be in a situation where I don't have some level of redundancy in a tool set. So just a matter of how you want to allocate which resources against which numbers you want to pay attention to, I guess.
I think redundancy is really important. When I was at Getty Images, when we implemented our bid management solution, there was something off in the data. And then we started digging in SciCat to see if we could find out where it was. And we could see that it basically followed the same trend. So then that validates what you're seeing in one tool to another tool. So I think that's really important. Sometimes it's not always about the absolute number. Sometimes it's about the trend that you're seeing.
And stuff's going to go wrong. And stuff always goes wrong. And to Lizzie's point earlier of maybe dipping your toe a little bit is not a terrible idea, because you can get a framework for when stuff goes wrong. What kind of response are you going to get? What kind of service are you going to get? What kind of resources do you get from the technology vendor to help you get through the problem? I mean, who hasn't double counted revenue? Right, okay, like, the honest people in the room are like, oh, hell yeah, and other people are like, no, we didn't double count anything. We made all that money. Sure.
Or you have a longer cookie length on one tool than the other. That's really fun.
Yeah, so one's 30 days, one's 34 days.
Or
and
60.
And we know how accurate those are going to be. All right, no sidebar rants. Ensuring success in these relationships, in our discussions, 3 things really resonated. I love my voice today. Awesome. Communication, providing all information. And Rhonda, I'm going to put you on the spot because I want you to tell me exactly what you're talking about there. Because if you feel people are withholding information from you, it could be paranoia or it could be reality. So let's talk about that for a minute. And then working hard and playing hard. I don't know where that came from, but
that's not my mantra at all.
Somebody take us out to dinner after we're putting all this stuff together. But Lizzie, when we were talking about your process of looking for partners, looking for agencies, the emphasis was largely on communication. And so, what kinds of things are you looking for right out of the chute?
It was really important to us to be able to talk to them whenever we wanted, and not in an annoying way, but again, treating them like a teammate where they're sitting next to you, and not just have this really formal weekly call and that's it. And likewise, if they felt like things weren't going well and they were executing something we told them to do and it wasn't working, to tell us that day and not wait for the next call. So having it be very casual and open and honest was really important to us.
Providing all the information.
Did I write that?
Yes.
Okay.
Not just tidbits. I think where you were headed with that was you felt like in one instance, and we're intentionally leaving the company names out of this discussion, not just for the obvious legal reasons, but anyway. But you felt like when you were going through a review process, you weren't getting all the information. And this is a very transparent world we're living in. You can't, first of all, it's a very small industry. You're going to meet everyone at least a dozen times in this business. And 2, if you're intentionally sort of masking the facts, it comes out pretty quickly. I mean, it's hard to do that.
Yeah, it's true. And touching a little bit of what Lizzie was saying, it's admitting where your weaknesses are or where you've made mistakes. To me, that's super important. I would rather have a technology or an agency come to me and say, I really screwed up here. And then I can go, okay, I know. Now we know how to move forward in this, and it's, not everybody falls. Everybody falls. So that's what's really important is admitting I have weaknesses. I screw up all the time. I screwed up a couple of weeks ago, and I had to say to my team, I screwed up. So let's move forward. Let's fix this so that we don't do it again. It's super important.
Is that rare, guys? Do you get people that feel accountable, or at least you have to be confident in what you're doing to say, look, this didn't go well, but we're gonna move something forward. I've always found that clients are a lot more responsive to, hey, this didn't go the way we thought it would, but here's what we're thinking going forward. Do you get that in the technical side as well? Dave, do you get that?
We deal with that every day. No, I'm just kidding. Unfortunately. There's always things that come up, whether it's human error. I mean, our business, it's as much as it's strategic, it's very, very tactical from an execution perspective. And so, the tactics is really what, at the end of the day creates the success, I think, unfortunately. But our business is just so many details that need to be addressed, whether it's in search or social or whatever it might be. So sometimes just being excellent at handling those tactical details. But to the extent you miss step 49 of 50, it doesn't go quite right, then all of a sudden, all that great work you did, 1 through 48 is messed up. So, that's challenging. And the technology side, you're dealing with some things that are out of control as well. So, whether you're working with a third-party API that's not giving the right data back to be able to report on a campaign, to the extent, is it Facebook that didn't give us the right data? Is it our system? Trying to track that stuff down can be challenging, especially when you have a lot of new technologies. But generally, these are all the things that you deal with as a new startup, and hopefully as you mature, you kind of get over a lot of this stuff.
Yeah, I was going to say, working with Facebook and Twitter, what could ever go wrong?
But I think as the businesses mature, whether it's back in the search days, this stuff would go awry constantly. But as the technology matures, the people mature in the industry, so you start making less and less of those mistakes, or hopefully a lot of that stuff goes away. But generally, those are things that we try not to do, but it's sort of inevitable, I think, in the early stages of some of these industries.
Well, and hopefully, as we're bringing the kids, as it were. I can't believe I'm actually saying that. 10 years ago, I think I was one of those kids. Now I'm talking about the kids that are coming into the business. I mean, hopefully, we're giving them some level of education as to don't forget that your clients are people too. They have people to answer to internally. You're not just answering to them. They have bonuses to hit. They have career objectives. And I think if you're good enough to start thinking of your client as people, as a person, as opposed to just this person this thing that you're rolling up to. But the best point, I think, Rhonda, there is that everybody falls down. Everybody's got to get up too. So you don't see a lot of
I think one of the things we always used to say, and Brian Wiener at 360i always used to say, is like, our job is basically to make our clients successful, to help our clients get promoted. If we're doing that, we're doing a good job. So whoever it is that hired us out there, we want to make sure we're making them look good, we're making them look successful, bringing strategic ideas to them. Ultimately, that's how we should measure our success.
Cool. All right. I just thought this was hysterical. It was a little Jack Donaghy, take this back to the office. He was on the cover of the American Airlines magazine, and then like 3 months later, they were kicking him off the plane for playing Words with Friends. Just nonstop comedy. But so in terms of finding consensus to things that will help you succeed, if they fail, you've failed. When you're hiring technology companies, when you're hiring partners, this came from an old CMO and mentor of mine who we lost last year. So I always honor him with this. If they fail, you failed. And it was this big thing that when we started working with this big brand, he sat everybody in the room, all the agencies down in the room, and his entire staff, and said, if they fail, you've failed. So there's I think a tendency to hire people and expect them to just run off and do whatever you've told them to do without any sort of assistance. And I think that's where clients sort of drop the ball on occasion, not pointing fingers, because neither of you are my clients. The second, and Rhonda, you brought this in, collaborate, define, and execute. And Doug and I have worked together for a long time. We like the don't panic as kind of a nod to Doug Adams. Is it Doug Adams? He just recently had a birthday.
Hitchhiker?
Yeah, Hitchhiker's Guide. Yeah, don't panic. Yeah. Do you believe if they fail, you failed as a brand? Could you maybe? What is it that you?
I think
you
it's
would
really.
do?
I think what's really interesting is you were saying that if your client gets promoted, that's success. And I almost feel the opposite. Like if I can work with an agency and that team member gets promoted, I feel like I was successful. I mean, and I've seen that. And it's tough when you're working with an agency and you have to fire someone on the team. You have to call in and you say, this person just isn't working out. They're not a good fit. That's a failure on my part too. Like, what could I have done differently? It's just like an employee, really. It's like you have to mentor them. you have to be invested in them, moving forward too.
Sure. Lizzie, collaborating, defining parameters. I mean, we talked about setting goals and setting an expectation level on the way in, collaboration, and then following up on executing. Do those three disciplines resonate with you as well?
Yeah, for sure. And it's related to the if they fail, you've failed, because you have to have common goals and not just float goals out there and then say, okay, run with it. So I think being collaborative and iterative to some extent is really important, and being clear, and then hoping and praying that everybody executes.
Yeah, don't panic is all mine. I think we're not saving lives here, folks. It's advertising. Things are going to go wrong. You don't need to freak out. So we're heading towards winding down. I want to get some questions from you guys as well. Feel free. This is your avenue. This is when you get free advice from all of these people up here. And by free, I mean whatever you paid to get into this event.